Welcome to the Retrograde video game podcast, where this week we talk about the show everyone's watching. It's Fallout on Prime.
My name's Andrew Baskin. With me, as always, is the bad boy of podcasting, Mr. Bebop himself.
Everyone's favorite Pit Boy, Mikey Aaronworth.
You really do have Pit Boy energy, huh?
Well, there's Vault Boy, who's the guy with the thumbs up, little blonde-haired fuck.
Yeah.
And then there's Pit Boy, which is the thing people wear on the wrist. And I'm kind of a tool, so that's why I call myself Pit Boy.
I thought, just his general, you don't look like Vault Boy.
No.
But you have Vault Boy energy.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm a go-getter.
Yeah.
I really love the rules.
Clean, spick and span, big white smile, like, I'm ready to do it.
Big what smile?
White.
Mm-hmm.
We've got white teeth.
Oh, okay. I'm just going to let that linger there. You're accountable for your words, Andrew, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, later we find out. We don't want to get into this right now.
No, we don't. Because we're talking just about
the Fallout TV series on Amazon Prime.
And the first 4 episodes only so far.
First 4 episodes only. Okay. So we are going to be talking about it, spoiling it pretty much from the jump. So this is our warning right now. If you haven't seen the first 4 episodes or you don't want them spoiled for you, here we are telling you to see you later.
See you later. We'll talk to you in a few. But we will come back as well with like a full episode review, I think, once we've both had time to watch the entirety of the season.
Yeah.
Each episode is very long.
Very long.
It's like an hour plus for everything, which is,
I'm not going to say I know we might have different feelings towards this, but is that every time the episode would keep going, I'm like, oh, there's more.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it like, oh, there's more. Like, Jesus, where you're checking your, the remote. Just go like, how much longer is it?
Yeah.
I was always pleasantly surprised they were giving you more and not leaving you with these huge cliffhangers. They tried to like close it in each episode.
For sure. It's weird though that TV, prestige TV, has kind of gotten to the point where
pinky up,
drinking your martini, has gone to the point where it's kind of blurring the lines even more between movie and TV. Not because of the budget, but because every episode almost is movie length now.
Yes,
and I think this is why movies are getting so much longer.
Yes. They're like, I see TV on our yard here. We'll show them long.
100%. We just, my player one and I just watched Prisoners. We'd seen it before, but we're on a big Denis Villeneuve kick because why not? It's a great kick to be on. Mm-hmm. And Prisoners is fucking like 3 hours long. Yes. Arguably doesn't need to be that long. Magnolia was 3 hours long. Yep. And these are, older movies, but that's becoming more and more common. When we only have 2 hours to watch a movie and we turn on Prime or Crave, or what Crave is the Canadian version of Max, I guess would be how you'd say it. It's very, very seldom is a movie an hour and a half anymore.
And that's why, 2 things. What most recently, Civil War.
Yes.
Hour 49.
Woo! Civil War.
Yeah, baby.
You saw Civil War, right? Can we meander into the realm? I know we don't like meandering into the realm of movies and TV too much, and we obviously will get to Fallout in a second here. Usually love to talk about video games, but
now we're spoiling Civil War.
We don't need to necessarily spoil it, but I just want to get your impressions on it because we haven't talked about it at all.
No, we haven't. It's a movie by Alex Garland starring Kiki.
Are you done? Can you finish? Because I have opinions to say.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to get there.
Hurry up, Andrew. Okay. I'm so bored.
Alex Garland makes interesting films.
Shorter.
No matter what.
Quicker.
Even if you don't like it or not, because we've all seen Men.
Wrap it up.
Boy, oh boy.
Was that Alex Garland?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So they might not always be good, but they're always interesting, right? And I think Civil War just falls right into that. It's the biggest budget he's ever done, and I think that shows with the visuals and the sound design. Holy smokes. We saw it in AVX. A bullet comes from a corner to the other corner, and you literally go, whoa, Jesus Christ, in the theater.
This is one of the first, I think Dunkirk was another one where I watched a movie being like, I don't know a lot about sound design, but that deserves an Oscar for it. And 100%. I think Civil War is in the early runnings for sound mixing, sound design. The soundtrack choice is unbelievable.
When they set that battle, the first battle to De La Soul, I was God. Yeah, all right, let's go.
I have been nonstop listening to the Civil War soundtrack since, it's got some Love Finger, it's got some De La Soul, it's got some Sturgill Simpson in there, it's got a bunch of oldies. It's fantastic. It's really, really good.
Soundtrack.
The soundtrack. Did you not come?
No, I liked the movie. I thought it was really good. I saw it on a Monday, so the weekend after it was
that's when Solomon Grundy was born.
Yes, it was. Yeah, the same day.
Yeah.
Is that it was getting lower audience scores and the reviews were like kind of mixed.
Yes.
And so maybe my expectations were lower too. I'm human. I am influenced by these things.
Yeah.
And so I said, I don't know. Maybe it's not gonna be that good. And I walked out. I'm like, I don't know what the hell people are talking about. I thought that was great. And I think it's mostly expectations. You see the trailer, you see the title of the movie.
Yes.
And you expect Alex Garland's going to walk into the middle of the screen and go, my politics are your politics. And we agree on everything. And I'm going to show you exactly why the Civil War in America is going to happen. The movie is void of politics. So I'm just setting you for your expectations. It's not really a spoiler.
Almost distractingly Annoyingly so.
Yeah, they try desperately not to talk about why the war started.
Yeah.
Who's winning? What? Like, does the president align with this party? Do the Western Front align with this party? They don't do it at all. And in that way, it's very interesting that the way they tell this story, because you can just talk about why wars or how wars happen and how we record them.
Right. And this, to piggyback on that, is not a movie about war as much as it's a movie about journalism.
Yeah, journalism.
It was more interesting. My player one and I were like, so the journalists just like follow the soldiers around? Like that seems like a liability, but the soldiers seem to be okay with it. And it's like that and you know, the morality of journalism, the kind of detachment that a journalist has. Kirsten Dunst saying things like, we turn off our moral compass so that, or like we let other people do the judging. And it's like, I honestly walked out of that being like, that was really good. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that was like really good.
Yeah.
Like I really, really liked that movie.
Yeah, and it sounds so heady if you hadn't seen the movie, but it sounds so like, you know, like, oh God, fuck, they're gonna preach to me about. Yeah. They really say very little. This movie is not a lot of talking.
You don't know what the war is about. Oh, you mean dialogue?
I just mean dialogue. It feels very heady of like people preaching to you, going like journalism is important and stuff like that. It really doesn't. It just kind of shows you what they do, and you go, oh fuck me. Okay, that's like, you know, whatever. I thought the acting's really good. People just pop in for these little moments.
Oh my God, Jesse Plemons.
Jesse Plemons is Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yes.
He's our new Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
He just shows up and you're like, uh-oh. Even like Killers of the Flower Moon, he opens the door and he's like, hey, I'm here for those murders. You're like, uh-oh, Jesse Plemons is here. Like,
he is maybe my favorite actor right now. Like he's just, every time he shows up, I'm happy about it. And
Kirsten Dunst is awesome. You know, and
she's great.
She's looking older, and in this role, it works so well to be tired. You know what I mean? To be exhausted by the world. And I thought it was really beautiful. And that last 15 minutes of Washington is like edge of your seat, grabbing the things of like, it is so propulsive and moving forward. I just loved it.
It's funny because I think watching the trailer, I thought that last 15 minutes, and we're not going to spoil very much, but the last 15 minutes are very combat heavy.
Yeah.
And I expected most of the movie to be like that. It is a road narrative, and I thought that it was going to be war with pockets of quiet as they move from one battle to another. And then in the last 15 minutes, you get this activity, this raucous activity. And I'm like, I don't know if I could have handled that for an hour and 40 minutes. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially the way he shoots it.
Yes.
You know, I just, it's really interesting. And I don't know. I did walk out and I was like, cause I thought about, you know, people I know that had said stuff about the movie and I was like, that weren't crazy about it.
Yeah.
And I just said to my player one, I was like, you know, how dare Civil War come out when movie discourse is as dumbest? like I just feel like most people are like, I didn't like it, too long. And you're like, good review. Thanks very much. I'm so glad you thought about this movie. And
you don't need to quote my Oppenheimer review.
That's not what I meant.
No. I know what you mean.
It's just so funny that like, it's just like, it is a very interesting movie. And there's little parts that I will take from it that you're like, oh shit, that's like tough.
That's a good way to say it. It is as different a movie from any other movie I've seen in a long time.
Yes.
It feels different. The pacing's different. The sound is different. There's quiet at weird points. It's loud at weird points. It feels like it's always asking something of you.
Yeah.
And I don't think that every movie needs to be that, but it's great that we're still getting movies like that.
And if it makes people uncomfortable, I think maybe the context of the movie that I would understand being uncomfortable about is the idea that wars like this happen all over the world.
Right.
And the fact that it would happen in your backyard and we see people act the way they do and we record it, I think makes people feel uncomfortable that they're like, this happens all over the world. And we choose, just like there's two people there, they say it twice, that there are people in America that are just acting like it doesn't happen.
Yes.
That's what we all do to this kind of stuff. And I think it makes people feel uncomfortable that that's how we feel about it. But I think it's an interesting, perspective to have on
100%.
war in general. So yeah, interesting movie. I would recommend people see it.
I agree.
Go see it in a theater too with loud, big speakers. Like, oh yeah,
the sound itself is very important. Like when it comes to visual movies, I'm okay watching them on my big screen at home. I like it. I think it's a great TV, but sound is something that can't be matched unless you're at the theater. So, well, look, that was a lot of talk about movies.
Yeah.
I just had to get that off my chest because I haven't really had a chance to talk about Civil War. If you like video games, watch it. I don't know. Does that make sense?
I don't know.
I just need to loop this back to. I need to loop this back to video games.
Hit it on those. They could have had someone play Call of Duty. And
or
something like that. And you're like, war.
Call of Duty 10, where it like the setting is like Alabama or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yes, we and pretty much everyone in the world was watching Fallout when it premiered on April 10th. It premiered early, by the way, on Amazon Prime. It was supposed to premiere on April 11th. And April 10th at 9 p.m., they're like, we're releasing it early.
Yeah.
And you're like, they know they have something on their hands.
100%.
They know they have a heater. Like, they're like, people want to see the show and it's good.
And it's also like, I'm always kind of like taking a step back and a little meta or whatever, but like I'm always amazed at the marketing tactics that I didn't know existed until they happen. And that's definitely one of them. All it takes is a tweet saying like, "Oh, hey guys, Fallout is available now. It's available now." And then you everyone kind of rushes to Amazon and gets everyone's eyes on it. It's interesting. I want to kind of set the stage by talking about our experiences with Fallout, the video game. Not necessarily beat for beat, but what our relationship with Fallout is, when we got involved or became aware of the franchise, if at all. Do you want to go first a little bit? Because I know you're a little bit colder on the franchise.
I've only played sporadically on Fallout. And it's so tough because watching this, I'm going to save my thoughts at the end, but like, you know, playing this game, there's so much that aligns with interests of other video games that I really like. Yeah. Then I'm kind of like, why didn't I play this game? Yeah. And I think it's just a blind spot for me, even though I'm relatively familiar with the like some of the terms and some of the ideas around it. So enough watching it that I was like, oh, I know what that is, you know, kind of thing. So, but you've played it way more than I have.
I have a pretty strong relationship with Fallout. We go way back.
Oh yeah.
We grab some beers together.
Every time they're in town.
Every time they're in town. Yeah. We always say like, oh, you're going to be in town, let's grab a drink. And then I don't hear from them for a little bit.
Yeah, we should do this again soon.
Yeah.
And then 2 years goes by.
And then we look in the mirror and our bags are a little bit bigger. Wrinkles are a little bit bigger.
Losing all your hair. Wait a second.
Wait, oh, Jesus.
You're describing me, aren't you? That hurts.
I think I'm describing the human condition.
I think that is true. Yes.
But no, amazing. Fallout. I got into. What did you say?
I think I look amazing.
No, I think you look amazing too.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah.
General population.
General pop. Gen pop.
Gen pop.
You're talking to the prisons now.
100%.
They think you look like fresh meat. I think they.
And I think you should get your votes. So there you go.
Oh,
that's
their vote.
Political. Getting political.
They want to open up your ballot box, Andrew. That's what I think. Yeah. Boy, do they.
They don't have to fight that hard.
So the my relationship with Fallout, I got into it at the release of Fallout 3. I followed that release very heavily. I know there were a lot of like OG Fallouts 1 and 2 when it was kind of that more of a like a strict RPG isometric perspective, almost like Diablo style, but with it's like System Shock mixed with something more like Diablo,
right?
Turn-based combat and all that, which was never really my thing. In fact, I was very unaware of the franchise prior to Fallout 3's release, but I followed the release quite heavily. The switch to first person, the you know, that retro futurism aesthetic, which I've always kind of really enjoyed, and the loneliness of venturing through the wasteland. There was a time when I was playing Fallout 3. I was in university at the time, so I had time to play video games. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I think this has to be my favorite game of all time because I'm playing it so much and getting so much enjoyment out of it. And in spite of that, I never beat Fallout 3. I never beat Fallout 4. I never beat Fallout New Vegas. I played all of them. I've never beaten a Fallout game.
That does not shock me.
But for a different reason. Because I know Mikey doesn't finish, but I've put hundreds of hours into these games. I've just never cared about the main story. What Fallout is about to me is venturing through the wasteland as kind of like a unimportant protagonist and coming upon these different set pieces and figuring out how these pockets of civilization have coped since the Great War. And not that Great War, their Great War.
Yes.
But all wars are great. I mean, I think we could just say
they're fantastic.
They're so good.
The Incredible War should be the next one. The Amazing War.
The Super Duper War. Yeah. Just like the Super Duper Mart in the Fallout universe.
Yes.
So I was very excited at the prospect of a Fallout TV show because what had spoken to me about Fallout was primarily its setting and its aesthetic.
Right.
I love the music. I love the wasteland setting. I love the currency system of the coins. I love the kind of the background. The caps, not the coins. The lore going around, like just kind of this ongoing. I feel like I know so much about this world, and it's kind of painted a lot of my likes and dislikes in my life. I know pretty much the entire soundtrack off by heart, which is fun. For my player one, when I just start singing along to these songs she's never heard before. So when the trailer showed first with Walton Goggins and this big budget and everything looked fantastic, I was like, I'm in with both feet. So very high expectations for me going into this.
Yeah. Well, like this is the era of adaptations of video games into movie and television. We saw the Super Mario Brothers movie last year be one of the highest grossing movies of the year. And then the year before that was Last of Us on HBO. This is funny because it kind of fills a very different slot than those ones. Last of Us is pinky up prestige television.
Yes.
It's about zombies and all that kind of stuff. But it is very much a human drama that is dark and serious and oh no, alien, you know, kind of stuff. Super Mario Brothers is what you imagine they always would have adapted video games. They just never did it successfully, but they should have. It's poppy and big and colorful and funny and bright and very much candy because it's gone afterwards and you don't think much of it. This is somewhere in the middle. And I don't mean in quality, but I mean that it is a little over the top at times with big, bright colors and jokes, trying to cut things with jokes, but also at the same time, very serious and dark and gory. And so it is kind of this middle era where they have not really touched, and I think is a ripe ground for audiences because it is a broad area for audiences.
I agree. And I think that does touch on what the Fallout games kind of strive for. I forgot for some reason, like, you know, my player one doesn't love gore too much.
Oh boy.
And I did for some reason didn't think that gore would be incorporated into this, but like the I think it's the VATS system or whatever of Fallout where things slow down and you like aim for someone's head and their head just explodes. Was like a selling feature of the game. So I'm like, of course they're going to incorporate that. Generally speaking, though, you know, this swaying between taking itself very seriously and then telling a joke and kind of being in the middle and not really having a consistent tone, I think works for a lot of people. Does it work for you?
In this show?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it did a really good job. I think it balanced itself well in between these things. I think it has really strong performances. I think they did a really good job casting Ella Purnell as Lucy. Lucy McLean, which also very distracting for me. Lucy McLean is Die Hard's daughter. Die Hard is
Die Hard's daughter.
Is Die Hard. You know, Mr. Die Hard, the cop from New York that comes to LA.
Dr. Die.
Yes. Mr. Hard.
Wait.
Hey.
No one's ever called me that.
Bruce in the 80s. Mr. Hard, definitely. Is that, Lucy McLean did a really good job of casting her because she's got these big anime style eyes.
Yeah. Distractingly large eyes.
Distracting silver dollar size eyes.
Eyes that make Steve Buscemi jealous.
Yes, he's weeping with his large chameleon style eyes.
He's always weeping. They're always very wet.
They're always so wet. And it really sells that innocent thing about her because she is both likable and competent. And that's a really, and naive.
Yes.
It's a really tough balance to strike that you go, she is still like, oh, gee willikers, okie dokie, and all this kind of stuff, and yet will like cut somebody's head off.
They do a great job capturing that energy of a vault dweller, like in the Fallout universe, because that's what they do. Like the vaults were created with the intention of repopulating. So they got to basically scrap the school systems and start from scratch in this very focused way. So, you know, learning all the different elements of whether it's combat or repair or computer, whatever it is. So she does become very competent, but very sheltered. And like, I think that's one of the best things that this show has done.
100%. And so they get that right. And so when she is able to do something brutal or make a joke or be disgusted by something, it does kind of check out. You're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I never don't believe what she does.
Yes.
You know, even I mean, to get into some of the specifics in episode 4, when she goes to the Super Duper Mart and she's about to be sold off for parts, essentially, and she very competently and viciously fights her way out of it, threatens the two people who are running the mart, who are going to sell her organs. And in order to let her go, she says, you need to let all the ghouls go. Yeah. So she still has a moral compass, but is naive enough not to realize that some of the ghouls are beyond repair.
Yes.
And it puts herself in danger. And this process of showing these kind of like bit by bit moments does a really good job of showing her character growth. Yeah. So I never feel like, well, how did she become hardened like now? How did you, like, I always believe that she's going along the motions correctly, I think.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. And I think that balance, they strike the balance well. I think they've clearly put a lot of money into this. And this is always really tough when you talk about Amazon shows or Apple shows, because they'll just throw a bunch of money at it and go like, yeah, it's a byline. Like it doesn't, we don't actually need these to make money.
Yes.
And so it's always really tough when you're like, hey, good for them throwing a lot of money. Like, yeah, well, yeah, whatever.
They're not doing it for the good of humanity.
Yeah. It's like they're doing that and then they're spending $1 billion on a Lord of the Rings show that no one watches.
Yes.
And you're like, yeah, okay, well, you know, whatever.
The one thing that surprised me though, talking about the budget, I mean, clearly they spent a lot of money on, I hope Walton Goggins is getting his payday because he deserves it.
I hope so.
I hope
get that bag.
Yeah, get that bag, Walton. Especially for getting put in that makeup before every scene. That's got to be a nightmare. It's like the opposite of Pedro Pascal in it's like he has to show up in makeup. He can't put a mask on.
Mandalorian?
Yeah, Mandalorian.
Yeah, not Last of Us. Mandalorian shows up. Yeah, for 5 days a year.
But budget wise, the props And the costumes, and especially the big chunky elements of the set, the large doors, the power armor from the Brotherhood of Steel. Is it just me, or do they look really cheesy? Like very cheap?
I don't think cheap is the word I would use.
No?
I would use them as like over the top. Like there are times where I think their guns are Nerf guns painted.
Yes.
But
yes.
I think that's more the style that they're trying to show, that they're like these big oversized.
For sure.
You know, whatever. And I love, you don't like the Brotherhood, the Knights outfits?
I mean, I love the design from the games,
yeah.
But when they move, it looks like spray painted styrofoam. And it probably is because it has to be. But they're usually, when they do something like that, it looks more real. Like there's something that looks very fake, almost to the point when I'm watching it, I'm like, did they do this intentionally to make it look like chunkier and more like blown up? I don't know what it is, but
I don't know.
The doors, like the vault doors moving, and sometimes like the placement of some of the props just look like scattered shit that they bought on Amazon and just like threw in there. There's an element of this that feels like community theater to me at some points, even though it obviously has a massive budget behind it. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. No, I didn't get that part of it. I thought the scenes and the sets and some of the props, I thought they were really good because it told the story. And you know, if you're a huge fan of it, you could probably pause and like find all these little things. Yeah.
No, there's a lot of that. Even down to the sound design. Like when someone uses a stim pack, it's the same sound as it makes in the game. The little boxes of food and stuff are all references to the foods that you would find in the game itself. The designs of the stim pack are the same. All these things are very true to the source material, but it's so I'm not faulting it for that. But for some reason, when they go big, it just looks very distracting to me. I don't know why.
Yeah. I don't know. It sold me when the knights are walking across the like flats. And the three of them, and they're like the music plays, you're like, fuck yeah. Like, whoa, it's like, whoa, these guys are big.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And that's the feeling you get in the game when you first come across them. You're like, what the fuck are these things? How are we supposed to combat these? Yeah.
Well, I guess you want to kind of talk about the episodes a little bit, and then we can kind of hit on more things as we go through here.
Let's do it. I think maybe just to kind of set the groundwork here.
Okay.
You know, because we talked about the adhering to the source material and all that. There aren't a ton of differences between the TV show and the game, but a couple major differences that we'll kind of get out of the way before we start talking. In fact, I think the most notable one is the treatment of ghouls, and not their treatment, you know, socially. I mean, their treatment as in their handling of who they are, what they are, and how they're made. The ability to drink Radaway essentially in those yellow vials to stave off turning feral is not an element of the video games as far as I know. It feels like a mechanic in order to make Walton Goggins' character need to continue to move forward and keep him relevant. Generally speaking, the ghouls are just humans who have been exposed to too much radiation and survived. And eventually, after like 200 years, they go feral, and that's just what happens. So the fact that he's living this long is acceptable. The drinking of the Radaway stuff is an implementation of storytelling by the showrunners.
Gotcha.
And that's I think honestly the rest of the stuff is just kind of like, we'll probably get to it as we talk about it. But yeah. So do you want to? Oh, actually, let me say this. This is a cool bit of information, and this is thanks to Screen Rant for this timelines. Of the show relative to the video games. Yeah. So I'm going to go through all the Fallout games in order of earliest to latest, and then this will give us some context as to where we're at year-wise for the TV show. Okay. So Fallout 76 was 2102. Okay. Fallout, the original, was 2161. Okay. Fallout 2, 2241. Fallout 3, 2277, New Vegas, 2281, Fallout 4, 2287, and Season 1 is 2296. So it comes after all the video games.
Yeah, it's after all the video games, which I think is important to people because, especially when you get near the end of the season, I think that'll mean more probably.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So episode 1 starts with Lucy McLean. Lucy McLean speaking. Introducing herself and introducing the vault in her life, and she's explaining her qualifications on why she should be married. Yes, but it's showing her talents and skills, and she's very bright, and she's also physically capable, and and I think it's a really good introduction that because it's spick and span, it's clean, and it's like big smiles. And
it's stuff. Also very similar to a lot of the ways I can imagine this being a method of character creation in future Fallout games, because usually it's this look at your character, either like in Fallout Fallout 4, it was before the blast. In Fallout 3, you're like in the vault, but you almost explain yourself to the game to determine what your stats are, what you look like. So her being like, I'm good at this and I'm good at this and I've had these faults, is almost her choosing her stats, which is really cool. That's something that I really liked.
And people have pointed out that there's a poster on the wall that is very similar to where you choose your stats.
Yes.
So they're essentially doing that part of the game,
which is great.
Yeah, which is great.
They've also, I think Amazon's come out and released their stats that they have for each of the characters, which is very funny. And it's that is another one of my favorite things in the game, which feels kind of pandering because you don't notice these things unless you're a fan of the video game. Otherwise, it just seems like problem solving for anyone who doesn't play the games. But a character like Lucy's brother will sit down. Norm will sit down in front of a computer and it's like access denied. And I'm like, if his hacking skill were up, it could go. So he has to find another solution around it. And I'm like, that's just storytelling. But for me as a Fallout fan, I'm like, oh, his perks haven't been like he hasn't added to them yet. And I'm like, that I always like that stuff.
Yeah, so tell me to slow down if we do. But no, she's going to get married with somebody from Vault 32.
Yes.
There is an introduction of the two vaults.
Yes.
We find out they get married. It's beautiful. They're explaining their little Arkansas farm that they do, and they farm corn and wheat, I think. And they get married, they have sex, and they slowly find out that Vault 32 has been taken over by raiders who are impersonating Vault 32 vaulties.
And that's another key difference between the show and the games. As far as I know, there haven't been any instances of 3 vaults being like linked together in this way. So that's kind of new as well. Also before, like I am going to interject from time to time with like relating it to the video games lore. Because I've never beaten any of the games, my handle on the Fallout universe is skewed a little bit to just the experiences I've had. So if I get something wrong about the Enclave or the Brotherhood of Steel or anything like that, that's why I'm going to do my best here as like a fan of Fallout. But this is just my general knowledge of it when I chime in.
Right. I'm just remembering things based on the television show I watched. If I get it wrong, shut up. I don't care.
Shut the fuck up.
I don't care.
We're just having this conversation and it happens to be recorded.
It's not supposed to be right. It's supposed to be interesting.
Yeah. Imagine you woke up,
dickhead,
and you realize that all of your private conversations that you've had with your friend has gone out to the public.
Can you imagine thinking this was private?
We did for so long.
We did.
We don't know who's releasing this.
Yes,
I think it has something to do with Elliot.
Yeah, probably Elliot.
But he promised me that he wasn't going to do this. Elliot?
Oh. He's got a little smile.
He's got a little smile. And he's giving us a thumbs up. And I don't know if he's giving me the thumbs up or if he's measuring the size of a mushroom cloud behind me.
Yes.
But it's one of those things. And I'm not going to turn around to find out.
Oh, you know how it actually started? Sorry, it didn't start with Lucy. It started with
the pre
with Howard, with Cooper Howard.
Yes,
doing the birthday party.
The birthday party pre-war
with these rich idiots, and he is kind of down on his luck where he's doing somebody a favor.
Yes,
and his daughter has an adorable thing about the thumb, and like they're talking about if the explosion is bigger than your thumb, you run, and if it's bigger than because if it's not bigger. Oh, sorry. It's smaller than your thumb. You run. Because if it's bigger than your thumb, you're dead.
There's no point.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because that measuring the size of a mushroom cloud with your thumb is apparently an actual tactic that was dispersed. I don't know how accurate it is, but there had been theories that prototypical image of Vault Boy with his thumbs up.
Yeah.
That was what they were referencing. And Todd Howard, the creator of the game, said like, no, that's not actually it. So to go back and actually write that in as canon is kind of fascinating. Yeah.
Because he also says, can we get a classic thumbs up? And you're like, oh shit. Like,
yes.
It's already spinning. He's wearing blue and yellow. Yeah. There's all these good things. And just also Walton Goggins is just a very captivating character in general. He's just got you can't stop looking at him.
Right.
And so we see the explosions and we don't see an explosion. We see multiple explosions.
Yes.
And you're like, oh God, it's already starting.
It's starting, baby.
And there are so though. Introducing the retrofuturism, where it looks very much like a 50s mid-century modern LA home, but also there's a robot.
Yes.
Serving people. So
but like also a TV that looks like it's from the 50s as well.
It's black and white.
Technology is fantastic there.
Yeah, it's so good. And so we're seeing that, and it's the introduction of, the nuclear warfare.
Yep.
And then they go to the logo title, and then they introduce Lucy.
Yeah. First of all, I think you mean nuclear warfare.
What'd I say?
Nuclear?
I think
nuclear. see. Here's the thing. I never know which one.
I never know. And there's a joke about The Simpsons about it's pronounced nuclear.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, so is it pronounced nuclear or is it pronounced nuclear?
Because I know George W. Bush said it once wrong and he got roasted in the comment section.
Well, okay. To be fair, he's president of the United States. We're two idiots with microphones.
You know what though? Some might say the fact that he doesn't know is a good sign.
And I want to have a beer with that guy and I'd vote for him for the third term.
Great art though.
Very good art.
He's a really good painter.
Such a good painter. It's like how we go, that elephant is a good painter. You know, like it's like he can paint. It's like our expectation for him, IQ wise, is so low that he put some color on a canvas, and we're like, hey, pretty good.
Like a kid in grade 4 with show and tell, and you're like, you know what? He's showing some promise.
Yeah, it's like Coco the gorilla is like, hey, he's able to do some words. It's pretty good.
I rewatched or not rewatched. I watched for the first time the show Ripley on Netflix.
Oh yeah,
which is a play on the talented Mr. Ripley. Yeah, fantastic, highly recommended. And there's an ongoing thing about Dickie, how he wants to be a painter, but he's like such a bad painter, and you just keep seeing his paintings all over the place, and they're dog shit. I just love that ongoing joke. It's great. Funny. It's great. They look like if George W. Bush kept painting for a few years, that's what it would look like.
So the Raiders take over Vault 33.
Yes.
They have killed a bunch of people. There's a big warfare, and some of the Raiders died too.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is that they steal Hank, Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah.
Hank? I think it's Hank. They steal him and they leave with him, leaving Vault 33 in shambles.
Yeah.
Even though they've taken over some of the Raiders and they've imprisoned them.
Right.
And during that time too, Lucy hid Norm, her brother, who's a little coward, and hid him. And she was able to make some, level of, but some characters you've seen have died and they're left kind of in shambles for the first time ever because they've been introduced to the outside world.
There's also this parallel that they draw between Norm hiding from danger, which is what they all did to get in the vault in the first place.
Yes.
He ends up in future episodes feeling a lot of guilt about that. And it's interesting, what they don't touch on, and I guess it's a few generations removed, so I don't know that they could, but do the vault dwellers also feel guilt about having survived this thing, or do they just assume that the only survivors out there are in vaults elsewhere?
What their knowledge of the outside world is, and what they're teaching the people on the inside is shown to be in a stark contrast in the next couple episodes.
Yes,
because Lucy will come to terms with things that she thinks were correct, and the things she knew and the things she had no idea about. Because that education system seems to be very slanted.
Definitely slanted. Vault Tech, as the show goes on and as the game goes on, is revealed to be not such a great company. And it turns out these large companies are not so great in real life as well. So, I mean, Amazon, what an irony. They're like, these big corporations.
Can you ease off that a little bit? Like, no, it's a big part of the show. It's like, okay.
I don't know about that. I have to say though, because a lot of the Fallout games, most of the Fallout games, if I'm remembering correctly, begin with a vault being broken into or broken down, and then it's kind of like the demolishing of that vault and you escape. This one, and then you never really return to the vault. Right. It's gone. And I expected that from the show, but we do keep going back to the vault and then trying to deal with the aftermath. And I have to be honest, I don't love it. I don't want it.
Okay. This is funny. So this is a tough part because I've seen the rest of the show. You have not.
Yeah.
Is that some of my favorite parts are when they go back to the vault.
Really?
It is part of the show that I think they do very well, that they are sometimes telling 3 to 4 storylines all at once.
Sure.
Sometimes the Ghoul, Lucy, the Brotherhood, and the Vault. And all of them are interesting enough that when you cut away from one, you're not like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah, right, this. What is it going on here? I will say just have some patience with that.
I will, and I do.
Yes.
I also...
Oh, you're not going to just turn it off? I'm just going to stop? Yeah.
Nah. I've waited too long for this show.
A solo episode, 4 to 8, Andrew only.
Everyone's dream come true.
No,
get this fucker off here. Sometimes I will say about those 4 stories, the links that they go to intersect those stories are astounding.
Yes.
the fact that those characters keep crossing paths is wild. Down to like an episode 2 thing, not to jump too far ahead, but we'll bounce back and forth. Where I think it's episode 2 where the Brotherhood of Steel, what's his name? Maximus. His partner has like a radiation tracker to find out where the Ghoul went.
Yes.
And they're following that through the desert wasteland.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is not how there's radiation everywhere. This is, and I don't want to start picking nits, but I'm like, that's such a weird storytelling tactic to just get them to cross paths.
Yeah. You didn't like that the undead person was just walking around and they're like, I can't track him with radiation. That was your biggest issue with it?
Yeah.
No, I agree with you that they do intersect a lot. The ghoul is essentially teleporting.
Yes.
Like, there are times where you're like, how did he do that?
Yeah.
Whatever. You know what? He's also alive, so I can't. I don't know. What do I know?
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, and I guess we could talk about Maximus a little bit in the Brotherhood of Steel.
Sure.
You know, Maximus is a grunt in the army style
The
of
Brotherhood of Steel.
The Brotherhood of Steel, which is the essentially like a privatized army type thing.
Yeah, religious as well.
Very religious.
Yeah.
But they don't really hit on that. They're just like referencing the idea that it seems to be cult of some kind.
Yeah.
And they have the power of these suits that were used in previous wars because you hear Cooper Howard talk about how he used that suit in the past.
The power armor
when you use that. Yeah. And so there's this thing about you become a squire and then you assist the knight and it's very weird.
It's a weird kind of demonstration of the transfer of power leading to cycles of abuse kind of thing, which is just ongoing.
That's a good one. That's good.
Also, we just watched, as I mentioned, Prisoners again, which is another show or movie that really relies heavily on that. Yeah. But Maximus is a character that I struggle with a little bit in the show, to be honest. I think I don't know if they're doing it intentionally to make him unlikable. I hate commenting on like actors doing a bad job, but I don't think he's great. And I think there's a lot, and it may just be that there are a lot of really good actors around him. Yeah. But I struggle to understand his motivation sometimes. And when he kind of goes inward, I'm like, I don't know where you're going with this.
I agree with you. And I don't know. We'll have to kind of talk about this at the end, to see why these choices were made. Because there are times, you're right, where his face, he's just got this big sad face.
Yes.
And so when he just doesn't do anything, you're like, oh, this big sad idiot.
He just defaults to it.
Yeah. And he kind of is kind of childlike until you start seeing him next to Lucy or some of that. And you're like, oh, I think he's 6'1".
Yes.
Like, what the hell? And he's not a small guy either. But yet he's got this childlike thing. And yet he does things that are very selfish. And yet he does things that he thinks are right.
Right.
And you don't know where his moral compass stands, even to the point that the fact that he becomes a squire is because of his friend hurting themselves on
a razor blade,
a
put
sabotage.
In their shoe.
Somebody tried to hurt them. And because of that, Maximus gets the job. And even when you're like, oh, they blame Maximus, he did it. And they're like, no, I didn't. And you're like, yeah, he might have done it.
He might have 100%.
There's like a 10% chance he did that.
Honestly, though, there is a really good way to write a character like that when done well. And I just don't think they stick the landing with him because, a character who believes to their core they're a good person and the ways that they'll bend their own reality to convince themselves of that is always fascinating to me. I just don't think they do a very good job at that with Maximus, especially like they'll bend the story around him to give him these opportunities to show that he's a good person and all this stuff, especially like, his bully in the Brotherhood becoming his squire when he pretends to be the actual knight. And then that knight or his squire basically having a complete 180 in terms of his morality and saying like, oh, I never wanted to bully him and this and that. And actually he's a pretty good dude. And I'm like, those situations don't happen in real life. Like that just felt like fodder in order to test the mettle of Maximus.
The steel.
Well done.
Yeah. But other than it's just talking about a cycle of abuse that you talked about.
Yeah.
That's why. Why'd you bully him? Because they bullied me.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, okay. Well, whatever. Okay. So the Brotherhood of Steel, that's all a whole thing. They do show like how badass those suits can be and like how powerful you are.
Which kind of wavers a little bit. Sometimes you're hucking like a 200-pound stone, like 600 meters. Into the ocean, and sometimes you're losing a fight against a bear. Like,
the bear seems strong though.
Yeah.
The bear like carved up the armor because there's that scratch.
That
very smartly identifies that suit.
That's a great
versus
point.
The rest of the suits.
Yeah,
because they're like always like, oh, it's that one.
Like in Star Wars Episode 7 with the Stormtrooper helmet and the blood smeared on it, so you always know who whatever his name is.
Finn.
Finn.
Wow, I can't believe I got that.
Yeah, Finn Wolfhard. Interesting choice.
Yeah, somehow. The Emperor's back. Damn. Sometimes you think about how the Emperor's back sometimes. But yeah, they do that. And then I think we could just kind of like maybe converge the stories a little bit because then they talk about the ghoul. And now that we're nailing all these introductions here, the ghoul is essentially, they show him coming back from the dead with like, health bags that are like putting nutrients into him. And
it's Radaway, which is like a common pickup in the Fallout franchise. Okay. So as your radiation levels increase, you need Radaway to stifle them.
Is it rat poison?
Yeah, Rataway. Yeah. The antithesis.
Oh, it's RAD.
RAD.
Okay.
Yeah. No. Actually, it's Patton Oswalt voices the bags.
He's inside the top of his cowboy hat shooting people. Yeah. Yeah, so you see that introduction, and all the introduction is that guy's badass and knows how to shoot guns.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, okay, cool. And we know that is a one-to-one with the character that we saw previously. And you think, wow, how the hell did he become this monster?
Yes.
You know? And also, how is he still alive? That's the biggest question.
True. And that's a question I had as well. Yeah. Because I was like, I mean, I know the ghouls can last a long time, but this long, I didn't know for sure. So that's been cleared up for me, which is good. The fact that he can get shot in the next episode 20 times and not die, I'm like, that's not consistent. What is that about? He's immune to bullets?
I don't know what that all about.
I don't know what that all about.
Yeah, well, makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, people know what I'm saying.
Yeah. They have to struggle to figure it out sometimes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But all of us.
All of us.
And they all come together in Philly. I think that's kind of maybe where we can bring back the story here a little bit.
That sounds good.
Lucy is now with the scientist that we could talk about, Michael Emerson.
Yes.
Who I didn't really understand the scene at all. I found it interesting, but I did not understand. What is he stealing? What was he hiding? The dog, because at one point my player one goes, no, he's hiding the dog. I'm like, no, he's not.
Yeah.
He did something else. There's a machine there, and the dog is now his assistant that is helping out too.
I thought that he was linking himself to the dog somehow. But I don't know. I don't think that's actually what it was.
I will say, just in spoiler alert, they will reveal what eventually it is. It doesn't, you're not supposed to know right now. It's okay. But I was confused about that. And Michael Emerson, great actor, really happy to have him. I love him in Lost. And he dies so quickly in this show that you're like, oh, that's it for him. That's one episode.
There are a lot of cameos that kind of come and go, which I'm okay with.
Yeah, I'm totally okay with.
And I want
to flexing your money.
100% it is. And I want to take this moment though to talk about one of the issues that I have with this show. And this is where I'm going to start to reveal that I'm not a huge fan of this show.
Really?
And I'm tempering my thoughts on this because I haven't finished the season, so I'm not judging it. I'm interested enough that I will continue on.
Yeah.
But you talk about how everyone converges on Philly, and that's how the story continues. Yeah. The fact that there is an everyone, that there are 4 different characters, is a storytelling tactic that I don't think suits the Fallout universe.
Okay.
And I thought about why, and I think the reason is what I like about Fallout are these kind of desolate roads with stories all around you. All you have to do is kind of poke into them to find it. And when you get to a town, that's when the story happens. Right. But the protagonist is largely unimportant. I kind of wanted that. And the biggest comparison I have is The Mandalorian. And I think that tactic of like the Mandalorian himself is a foil, is basically not important. Their personality is uninteresting, but the pockets of civilization and the characters that they interact with, and you do also in The Mandalorian get these cameos from these famous people. That's what makes the show interesting. And that formula would lend itself really well to Fallout. And instead we're bouncing back and forth and we don't get to like stew in the silence ever, which I really wanted out of Fallout. And that's kind of where, I bring that up now because you talk about the introduction of these famous people and how they come and go. And I'm like, I think that could have been implemented a little bit better.
That's interesting. The Mandalorian is a Western, right? That's what it was designed as. An unnamed, no backstory. Cowboy shows up into a town, helps solve the day because he finds out all these characters. The first season of The Mandalorian is like that. And then every season after that is not, because it's all about his backstory.
Right.
And
I'm talking first season Mandalorian.
I agree with you, but the point I'm trying to make is the idea that the first season is his best season. And then they start giving the backstory of like who this guy is and the creed that he's been a part of, and how they can't take off their helmets and whatever, and you're like, oh, okay. And then Luke shows up and you're like, is this good? Like, I don't even know.
It was not
Ahsoka
good.
And all that stuff. I agree with you in the way that like the world building is the fun part.
Yes.
When you find out more and you're like this, and that's why I really like Philly, because the older woman that they have running this general store is great.
Yes.
And I love this part of it because she's just pointing out how fucked Lucy is.
Yes.
Like, you think you know what you're oh my God, you're so dead. It's 100%. Crazy. And I loved that part of it. And this is, to me, as much as the introduction of names and titles and things like that, this is a real introduction of everyone because you see their skills and how they can provide things. Maximus has the suit and that's really great, but doesn't know what he's doing.
Right.
The ghoul is hyper talented and like doesn't care about anybody.
He put all his stats into like gunslinger.
Yeah. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
And then Lucy, doing the right thing, even though she's putting herself in danger. They're really showing who they are, in this scene. And I think that's why this scene is probably the most important in that episode. And
one of the best.
Yeah,
pre-shootout, I think. Because the shootout itself, and this is kind of a continuing thing for me, where I think the action in the show is bad.
Oh, yeah.
Largely.
Okay.
I just don't, I'm not into it. I think it's, and where, you talked about The Last of Us and how it's like very moody and plotting. And The Last of Us knew that when you translate video game actions to TV and movies, there is a cheese factor that is lended to it, because it's like, you know, the more zombies you have and the more a protagonist survives these outlandish scenarios, the less believable it is. And where The Last of Us leaned away from that. So there are fewer interactions with hordes of zombies, and there are fewer interactions with, like, you know, gun fighting when there's like 100 different people. Fallout seemed to really lean into it, where instead of like a lot of silence with a gunfight, there's kind of always violence going around. Like every scene, it comes to a head with like a fight or a monster or shooting. And the more you do that, the more I'm like, how are we surviving these things? And I don't know that the combat does a good enough job of dialing it down to make it believable that everyone's surviving these, you know. And I know it's a weird nit to pick when we're dealing with like post-apocalyptic radiation and ghouls and all that stuff, but you set the rules that your universe lives by. And in this universe, one shot can kill you. And I just start to believe it less and less the more it goes on.
Interesting. You know, it's funny that I thought the way that they're telling the violence is so over the top that I had no problem with it.
That's definitely a choice. And I can see that, like, that's a good argument. And if that works for you, it works for you.
Totally.
Yeah.
You know, it's so funny. This is kind of why I wanted to start the conversation by saying, like, it's in this weird spot in between all these different displays of video game stuff we have, is because not everything can be Last of Us. And to be perfectly honest, I don't want everything to be Last of Us.
No, for sure.
It's where it's like, oh, Jesus, it's a real character study on the human condition. Yeah. You're like, oh, fuck. If they start doing that in this show with the colors and everything, I'd be like, get the fuck this off my television.
Yeah. Like how Batman just goes darker and darker. So every superhero on the DC side has to be like, we need to go darker. Like,
My God. I worry about the Batman going forward. Is it? I totally think that is completely valid. You know, I think we can just kind of fly through the next things that we like about it, because now we're just going to fly around. But, you know, I understand, because they got to fight against that big oxidodal or whatever it is, the big lizard thing that is in the water.
Yeah.
You know, I agree with you that it's more of like funny than it is scary or anything, when it has little thumbs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yes.
You know, this all also once again gets paid off later, but like it is kind of interesting that you're like, oh, look what we can do. And you're like, yeah, that's good. Because so much of the show is practical. And I got to give a lot of credit to that.
No, for sure.
It's really interesting how much they made very real. Even the fact that Walton Goggins is wearing that suit and just they take out his nose is very impressive.
Yes.
And I think it does a lot to help his acting and to make it feel more human in a very weird way.
And not just his acting, but also the world. It does, like, when you use practical effects, it does make it work a lot better. And, you know, to talk about that interaction with that lake monster or whatever that thing was, which has appeared in the video games before, actually.
Has it?
Yeah.
Okay.
The problem I have with it is, like, that whole scene, I know they were going for humor a little bit with it, but it wasn't very funny. And I think that they go for the joke a lot. And I don't know that they have the chops to land it as frequently as is necessary if you want to be kind of a comedy, because you'll go from something like that to a scene where they're tracing Walton Goggins through the desert with like a radiation tracer, to which and those scenes I'm like, okay, like whatever. But then you get a scene where they find the scientist's decapitated body, because Lucy has to decapitate his head to take it on to the next step, and they hold up a drawing of the scientist over his head. Johnny Pemberton does. It's like, yeah, that would have been him. I'm like, that's really funny.
Yeah, that's
like, if they should have brought maybe a little bit more punch up or a little bit more from a comedic perspective. I don't know.
The one thing that always made me laugh is every time that the knight has to run and in the voice goes, fuck. Shit. Oh God. Him being scared is so funny every time. And even the other old knight that was with the bear, like, oh God, and just like starts running very slowly.
Like Buffalo Bill out there. That Michael Rappaport.
I thought it was Michael Rappaport.
It was.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So you know, we get these the convergence in Philly and kind of the introduction of the characters, the clear interest between Maximus and Lucy, and then we kind of go on our merry way in the next episodes. Can
I just go back to the funny thing that happened in episode 2?
Oh, sure, yeah.
John Daly shows up.
Yes, which took me a while to realize it was John Daly.
I know, but it is also another sense of humor where, like, Maximus is like, I'm going to do right when these other guys have done wrong.
Yeah.
And he's like, stop fighting, go your own way. And he goes, yeah, that's fair. He was just fucking my chickens. And he seems so resigned to, like, I guess I'll let him fuck my chickens. Yeah, and he walks away, and I was like, oh, that is so funny.
Which is another, like, that is very Fallout to me as well, where you interact with two characters who have like in medias res, they're already in the argument, and you side with one of them and realize that you were so wrong. Yeah. And then the reactions you get out of that are also always hilarious. Like, that's the kind of thing that really works for me in this. And I'm not sure if it works because it's great TV or if it's reminding me of all the great experiences I've had in Fallout. Sure. It's probably a little bit of both, but there's definitely an element to that.
That part made me laugh just because like, and you get that Maximus. This is where his stupid face works because he's like, How do I do? And I like that part kind of works for me, but yeah.
I found episode 3 to be maybe the least important or eventful, of the first 4. It was kind of just like a transition one. Unless, do you have anything specific?
No, this is where the 2 fish fights happen.
Yeah.
And then we also go back to Vault 33 for the first time and see Norm starting to put together, going like, I'm a coward. I've never really liked anything in my job.
Yes.
Which I think
that was a great scene, actually.
I think Norm's casting is
perfect.
So perfect.
Is great.
He's so good because as he gets, you can start to see it in episode 4, he gets a little bit more like, wait a second, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
And that works because he is a coward and he's so little as compared to, especially casting Chet, the big tall guy.
Oh my God,
next to him is a really great example of him looking up all the time, but clearly having way more smarts than the rest of them.
Yes.
Of figuring out what is going on.
And also just like more existential awareness than the rest of them as well, which is important for a character who, like in Plato's cave, wants to start questioning the shadows on the wall, which is, I think, who they're setting him up to be.
Right. And the inevitability of having the Raiders inside and going like, what would you do to them? And it's like, okay, no, that's fine.
Yes.
I thought that was all very good. And they did a good job of casting everyone in the vault to be filling these very specific roles, to having Betty Pearson, being this grandmotherly, grandmother type character, even though you're like, she's gonna fuck me.
100%.
Because, but having that warm character, Zach Cherry being so funny.
Zach Cherry's great.
Zach Cherry's always good and stuff. So I'm just glad to see him getting work. But being funny and incompetent, but he knows what's going on, but he can't use his powers.
Right.
I just think all that casting was really, really well done.
And I think the dynamic between those 3, the 2 who are running for overseer, Zach Cherry and the other guy, and then the grandmother who isn't running for overseer, but is clearly the highest ranking person in there, whether she's overseer or not.
She is running for overseer.
She is as well? Okay. But their dynamics where they're friends and friendly with one another, but also just like, no, I hope you get it. Well, I hope that's very funny. And
it's very realistic about a workplace. It's more of some workplace comedy kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. And then setting up the whole idea, like you said, of the Raiders being in there and them being too morally high to be able to decide to kill them, even though that's clearly what they have to do.
It feels inevitable.
Yes.
And you're kind of like, well, how is this going to happen?
Yeah.
I like that they're just leaving the breadcrumbs for you, because then you're like, everyone wants to feel smart at home. Everyone wants to be in on the story before the characters even know.
Sure.
So you're like, oh, okay, good. That goes a long way for people. I like that part of it. And the other one about episode 3 before we move on is that it opens with, or I don't know if it opens with it, but you see another ghoul for the first time. And as a person that doesn't know about the Fallout video games, I wanted I'm like, oh, ghouls are a thing.
Yes.
That's the first thing.
Yes.
And the second thing is that other guy is losing his mind. You see the vials, you see all that kind of stuff. And they tell the story within 3 minutes of why the ghoul, Walton Goggins, is staying alive, where this guy, he shoots him in the head because he's going feral. I didn't know about that, and I was like, oh, they're zombies. Oh, okay.
Well, it's interesting too, because if you're like, and I worried about this after episode 1, because I was watching with my player 1 who has no reference points for Fallout, and I was really surprised at how much lore they threw at you in the first episode.
They really do.
Including the fact that they tell you that Walton Goggins' character, that the ghoul, may have gone feral when they exhume him, because they're like, put a chicken down there. If they go for the chicken there. So I knew what they were doing, and it's just a shorthand, and I had to pause it to be like, okay, wait a second, I have to explain this to you because they're not doing it. And I worried that they weren't going to at all. And I'm like, this is like some bold moves here that they've got going.
Yes.
But, eventually they do pull it together. And to your point, like wanting to feel like you're a step ahead of the characters, if you are in on the lore, that does feel pretty cool too. You're like, I know what they're doing.
100%. Everyone likes that part of it, right? So everyone, MCU was built on this, where you go, hi, I'm this character. And everyone goes, oh, that guy's going to be.
Or like in Oppenheimer, when they're like, the senator from Michigan.
Yeah, that's it's from Massachusetts. Thank you very much. Young John F. Kennedy. I can't believe they said that. That is one of those insane things.
That's when you just say the young senator from Massachusetts.
That young fiery senator from Massachusetts. You're like, oh, that's JFK.
Yes.
And then they go, John F. Kennedy. You're like, oh, okay. Well, then why do I even,
Or what about Dark Knight Rises, where
Robin?
Oh, your middle name is Robin? And I'm there like, no, it's not.
Yeah. He's a cop?
Yeah, call him Richard or Dick Grayson.
Yes.
Like, he's not Robin. Robin doesn't fit. That's his superhero name.
Why would he do that? I know, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Batman 3. Wow.
It had its moments. It's not the best.
Yes, let's go with not the best.
Yeah. So I've got a note from episode 4 as well as we go into it, which wasn't necessarily pertaining to episode 4 specifically, but it got me realizing that like what I kind of wanted more of was a focus on the technology. I wanted the technology to play more of a main character role in this as opposed to a side character. And I know you get the robot voiced by Matt Berry, which is fantastic.
So good.
But I wanted like the Pit Boy to play a little bit. I wanted to see more of that and the interaction between the technology that separates this world from our own, because that's always fascinated me about the Fallout universe. I do love the fact that the Pit Boy, which is largely just like the pause screen in the Fallout games, becomes like, it's got like missile defense on it, and it's got like digitized photos and a flashlight, and I'm like, that's really cool. I like that, and I wanted more of that. Every time they gave that to me, I was like salivating. I'm like, give me more of this.
That shit must be heavy, eh?
Oh yeah,
I keep thinking about how heavy that must be, because there's
they should all have like really strong left arms.
Yeah, like they should be really jacked, like Popeye in one arm.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a moment in the future where they take it off, and they just take it off and they kind of do something. I was so shocked they don't go like, oh, that would be great. Damn as well. It, you know, like
especially because this is like 50s technology. It's not going to be aluminum.
Yeah, it's like steel.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, so we also get to the Super Duper Mart. The ghoul passes off Lucy into the Super Duper Mart. Mr. Snip Snip is voiced by Matt Berry,
which is great.
Very also funny line. She goes, "You're going to sell me as a sex slave." He goes, "Oh, disgusting. No, I'm just going to take your organs." That's funny. And you also see the characters of people that are also in the fridges that are in prisons, I guess.
Yes.
Of like all these many different people, including one ghoul that is in the process of going feral.
Yeah, they are all ghouls.
Yes,
but
they're all ghouls.
They were all ghouls, which was an interesting choice. If you're harvesting body parts, I don't know if that makes sense, or maybe they were there for another purpose. I'm not sure. But but one of the ghouls at least is definitely feral. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, because they shoot a few of them, and then one like trying to talk her down.
Yes,
and it's showing Lucy's progression of like being human and be like, "Come on, I don't want to shoot you.
Yes,
like, you're okay."
Yeah.
And she attacks her and gets shot.
Yeah.
And also, it's an interesting plot device where they like you were saying about the ghoul, the main ghoul, is that they were showing that like, oh shit, he's out of the rat-away that is going to help him stay off from being feral.
Yeah.
That is an episode long issue because he now steals all of it.
And they just let that go away.
Okay, good. Let's not worry about this anymore.
It's a plot device that we don't need.
Because if every episode was like, shit, I'm almost out. It's like, oh my God. Like, God, that would have been annoying. So he's got like 100 vials. Okay, great.
I mean, it could have been like, he could have been the main character in that lame protagonist version of this that I want, where it's like, you just have to go town to town to find it and then let the story develop around him. But again, I'm not, whatever, it works as it is. But that episode, I liked it. I liked it because, again, what I love about the Fallout game is these set pieces. It's very similar to Red Dead, which is why I think you'd really like the game, where you're walking along and you're like, what is that? Why is there smoke coming out of that house? And you go in, and oftentimes the environment tells a story. So they've done this a couple times in the game as well, where they walk into the vault, for example, and there's a skeleton sitting watching TV. There's a toaster next to him and a fork in the toaster.
Loved it.
So many things like that.
Love that.
Are in the game, where when they go into a house and there's a family at a dinner table, and then she looks and there's just an empty bottle of pills.
Yeah.
The way that happens in the game is you walk in, there's 3 skeletons at a table, there's items to pick up on the table, and you pick it up and they're all poison pills. It's in the exact same way. So the item placement and the placement of assets within the universe tells the story.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that I think they do a really good job at with this show.
Yeah, like, because yes, you're talking about the first house before he met the ghoul, and you're seeing a table of 4, including a baby, which a baby skeleton was maybe not something I expected to see. I was like, oh, baby skeleton. No. And everyone wearing jewelry still, and like that hasn't processed yet. Like, oh my God, that was all pretty gross, but also does tell like a really cool story. And then the same thing is, so Chet and Norm go to Vault 32, and they have not seemingly had like a mutiny. It's seeming that there was fights, but people have decided to just end their own lives.
Yes.
Over and over again. Like, the guy giving the thumbs up, like the overseer, it seemed like. The person putting the
fork into the toaster.
Yeah, like just some crazy stuff. And very dark.
Yeah.
And very spooky too, because you didn't know if like, is there one person alive left or, whatever. I thought that was all very good.
And those are, again, the stories that I love the most about the Fallout universe. And you get a lot of them, like the stories of what happens every time you find a vault in the Fallout games, you go in there and you find something crazy has happened. And that's always fascinating to me. There was one where there's one vault in particular, which is really neat. They had everyone had to elect an overseer They didn't have one originally. They had to elect an overseer that would serve for 1 year.
Okay.
And that overseer would, at the end of the year, be sacrificed, would be killed. Oh. And then they'd have to elect a new one. So they continued to elect new overseers until there were like 5 people left. And then the 5 people were like, we're not doing this anymore. Fuck it. None of us are going to sacrifice ourselves for the rest of them. And then when they don't elect one, a computer plays an automated message that says like, congratulations, you value the community's life over all of them, and like you win basically. So they never had to be sacrificing people in the first place. But when you go in there, there's just like 4 skeletons and this recording playing, and it's like it's very
so funny. Yeah, because they answer a question I had immediately with Chet when Lucy was going to get married. Yeah, he's like, I love you, like, you know, whatever. And she's like, you're my cousin.
Yes.
Because I was like, they all must be really like ridden with incest. 100%. Like everyone had to be somewhat related.
They make the cousin jokes a lot in the first episode to kind of drive that point home, which is, just like Greg wanted to do to Lucy.
But that's why you had to go to another vault, because it's hypothetically a different family. And
exactly.
Whatever, you know what I mean?
It was cool.
You know, I'm sorry that you're not as hot on it.
Yeah.
I am not like, this is not the best show of the year. But I also was very interested. Like episodes would end and I go, oh, okay, well, you want to watch another one? You know, like, you know, that kind of level. I will say my player one was very fetched with this game. Like just movie, television show. What other option? Painting, book. No, she really liked it. Yeah. And so I really liked that she liked it because she also came in with no information whatsoever, never played the game. Yeah. And so she really liked it. And I think if she likes it, I think that means that a lot of people, the general population, will like this game.
I agree. Yeah. This TV show, Andrew.
Oh my God. Okay, by the way, you did it twice and I didn't know what you were talking about, where I was like, was he talking about the game? You meant the TV show.
Yeah.
I'm just so we're all on the same page.
It happens a lot because Fallout is a game and a TV show, so who the fuck knows? Yeah. But when I saw the trailer, I was like, thank God my family's finally going to understand my fascination with like the 40s and 50s and why I know all these songs, because I thought this would be the next Last of Us that everyone would watch. I'm not quite as sold that this is going to capture, not that it's trying to, that audience. It's not going to be as like universally watched, I think, as something like The Last of Us.
But let's be real. Last of Us got like 4 million an episode. This will be watched by 10 times as many people.
You think so?
Oh, not even close. Oh, it's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, true.
It's going to be watched by, it's this really bad thing where we go like, Succession was the last water cooler television. Yeah. And like 2 million people watched an episode. Yeah. And you're like, so people I know watched
within
it,
our circle.
Yeah. Like Young Sheldon is watched by 16 million
That's true.
people.
That's true.
So it's this really tough thing where like Fallout will be watched by way more people and will not win a single Emmy or, you know, whatever. But you know, that's just the reality of, I think, television.
Still worth watching. You know, I you know, if my mom and dad ask if they'll like it, I'll probably say, you know, give it a shot, but you might not. You know, I can't imagine them getting into it. So it's not going to have that kind of, I guess that prestige TV feel to it, like I thought it might, and not that it's going for it, but ultimately I think it's good that it exists. I think that it can become stronger with time and with a little, like a few notes after the season. I'm excited to finish off the rest of it. Like I'm not off of it, but it didn't grab me as like a massive Fallout fan the way that everyone in the universe seems to be fucking loving this show.
It got renewed for a second season as of recording today. Like just happened like an hour ago. So like it is, I think Amazon is very happy with the show. Yeah. And you know, it is very much setting up a second season. So like, I will say that, but I don't know. I liked it as the fact that it's been a week since it came out and we've watched the whole season. Yeah. It's only 8 episodes, so it's not like crazy.
8 long episodes.
8 hour long episodes. Yeah. Actually, that's not true. There's an episode that's like 39 minutes.
Oh, really?
But,
interesting.
Which I like, because they're clearly like, now this is a story.
Yes.
Now
that's
this
great.
is a story.
That's great. I love that.
And they kind of, instead of like this idea, like if we're watching shows on, you know, Apple TVs and like over the air kind of stuff, why does it need to fall into the segment of like everything's 22 minutes
just because we're used to it? That's it.
Exactly. You know, it should be like, no, this is a chapter. This is a chapter.
Which works.
Good for them for that. But I think it's really interesting. You know, we'd love to hear what you think out there.
100%.
Our D-pads, what do you think of Fallout the TV show? Episodes 1 to 4. We'll be doing episodes 5 to 8 sometime soon. Yeah. To get everyone a chance to catch up, but we want to hear from you so we can read out what you think of these episodes on our second half of this.
Yeah, send us all your thoughts. The retrogradepodcast@gmail.com is the way to go. We do have a couple comments and letters left over from some past entries. I think maybe we'll divert those to the next episode just because they're more gaming focused, and this was a little bit more TV and movie focused.
With Civil War too.
Civil War, but we'll hold off on that and we promise to everyone who has sent us letters and messages and kind words, we will get to you and read you at some point on the podcast. But
absolutely. But until then, we love every single one of you, and we can't wait to talk to you soon. My name is Andrew Bascom, and with me as always is Bad Boy Podcasting, Mr. Bebop himself,
Mikey Aaronworth.
Yes, it's a Retrograde podcast.
Game over. Take that thumb, stick it sideways, and shove it up your ways.
Furnished by Sad Styles Productions.
Do you think Nuka-Cola tastes good? I think it tastes so good.